All right, so let's talk economic rebirth and what this upcoming election that's less than a month away, that's how it's going to be affecting our economy, right? Because everybody wants to put all this information out there and everybody wants to take credit and point a finger. That's what it comes down to. But I want to tell you, it's much more simple than that. This is something that I've been talking about. If you've followed me for long enough, you've already heard some of this before. But to me, it kind of all culminates in this moment as we approach the election, because people feel that this election means different things than it does. The election means things because the election always means things, because we live in a democratic republic where we can vote and elect our leading officials. We can elect the people who are going to represent us as a nation. We can elect the people who are ultimately going to go to bat for us and fight for us and implement or attempt to implement change. But they ultimately implement change through policies, through their influence only. It's not through their own actions. And that's what some people miss. Some people miss the fact that in our country, that the president has no ability to actually change most things. They have the ability to influence. Now, if you have a candidate who's charismatic and catches the people's eye and gets people's attention and sucks people in, then ultimately that's how they influence change, because they can get into people's ears and they can get people to listen to them, and they can ultimately get people Congress and they can get things like that to happen because they get those people to implement the change that ultimately they have no power to implement on their own. Our founding fathers were brilliant enough to know that no one man or one person should ever have that kind of power or ability. So we have no concerns or hope, so to speak, of the next president actually implementing real change. Now, what the president can do is implement influence. And as I said, if that new president is charismatic and, man of the people, so to speak, and gets the Congress to listen, and gets these representatives and stuff to listen to him or her, and gets them to implement policies, then great. We've had countless presidents in the past who have had struggles and things like that, where they were in office and they were like, I can't get anything done. And some of them didn't say anything till after the election or after their term was well over. And then they wrote a book, a memoir, so to speak, and talked about how, well, because I was a Republican, the Congress was overran with Democrats, so they wouldn't let me pass it. Or because I was a Democrat and Congress was overran with Republicans, they wouldn't let me pass that. So like I said, let's just scratch all that for a second and let's think about what this really means in regards to the economy. And like I said, what I've been talking about since the pandemic, since back in 2020, in the summer of 2020, I started posting, and you can go back and check out some of my videos. Some of the early videos where I talked about it are actually on my old channel, which is now the Bayless Boys, and me and my boys actually do our antics on that channel. But you can look it up, and you can look and you can search and have it filtered by oldest, and you can find the old videos, and you can scroll there and see some stuff from the summer of 2020. But you can go back and see through this channel my early videos, even dating back into 2022, and I think 2022 is when I launched this channel, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But anyways, you can go back and look at some of the videos where I've talked about this before. I've talked about this economic rebirth, right? And some people have a hard time understanding what that really means. But the reality is, we're in a time of watching our economy change. We've been in this time for about 3 years now. And it was on the cusp, on the back end of that pandemic, that we really were in a new place. Because when the pandemic first happened and we first got locked down and stuff, everybody just kind of panicked and everybody kind of just freaked out. Well, some people, and I'll tell you, I was one of them. I was like, you know what, this is not even anything to think about. This is going to blow over like nothing, because I recall back when the swine flu, the H1N1, I remember when the early 2000s when that happened, and I was actually in college, and they said there was going to be this big shutdown. I was in college, so it was on a Thursday when we got the news, and they said, hey, there was an outbreak of the H1N1 virus, and they called it the swine flu, and they were going to have to shut down. They shut down colleges all over the country, but the reality was a Thursday afternoon, and by Monday morning, they were like, you know what, we think we've contained it, and so everybody go back to school. Like, I mean, they literally shut down some airports, and they shut down universities for a weekend. And so when this happened, when the pandemic happened with COVID, I was optimistic. I was optimistic in the fact that, hey, you know what, we've got great people in this country, really smart scientists, doctors. We've got just, you know, people who can figure this out, right? Now, everybody has their own conspiracy theories and everything about why it didn't get figured out faster or why it spread as rapidly as it did. But anyways, the point is like I said, the economic situation. So I was one of those people who was like, this is going to blow over. This is going to be a few days, man. No big deal. My son was actually in kindergarten. He got sent home for spring break, and his spring break was like, they got extended. They said, spring break's going to be 2 weeks long. And we're like, oh, okay. And I was like, hey, it's going to be 2 weeks long. We just get extra time together. And at the end of the year, you make up a week. And, you know, that's what we did in college in H1N1. I had 3 extra days at the end of the semester that I had to make up. What a bummer. I mean, it really was kind of a bummer because we felt it was stupid. We were like, we got 3 extra days. But no big deal, right? Worst case scenario. So that's what I thought was going to happen with my boy. I was like, he's going to get an extra week. But we get an extra week right now, so we're just going to kick it. It's going to be cool. And then they said, you know what? It's going to be 3 weeks. And they're like, you know what? We're gonna go ahead and have y'all come to the school and pick up laptops. And still, in my mind, I kept thinking, any day now, this is just going to totally blow over. And it took me... It took me a month or two in where I was like, this isn't blowing over, right? But I remember talking with a buddy. It was actually a guy I met at the school. It was right in the last couple of weeks of school. Like I said, it was March when we got shut down in Texas, where I was, right? It was March. It was March when we got shut down in Texas. And it was May when me and my buddy were talking about, like I said, it was a guy I met through the PTA, another dad. And he was big in real estate. He had, you know, been an agent for years, flipped houses, done a lot of things. And I remember he had a guy that he was working on building a custom house, and he called me up and he was like, hey dude, check it out. You're doing a lot of coaching online, right? And I was like, yeah, man. He was like, you're doing business coaching and trying to coach people through developing their business and stuff. I was like, yes, I absolutely do. And he was like, well, I got an idea, because he's like, do you have any ideas? Do you have some ideas how we could help this guy? He's like, I got this guy who goes to the country clubs. He's an ex-pro golfer, but now he just goes and does these training sessions and stuff like that. And he's like, he does these trainings, and because he makes a lot of money at these country clubs, because these people have got deep pockets. I mean, they are wealthy, and they're like, I'm wealthy, I'm a member of a country club, but I don't know how to golf, right? So they're like, we'll pay this pro golfer to turn me into a golfer, right? And the money is no object, because we need to look good for everyone else, right? So that's kind of how some of these people were. And that's not throwing shade, it's just real. You know, they got to keep up their appearances, just like we all want to keep up our appearances. So I'm not, if that came across a way, I'm not throwing shade. So like I said, they're sitting here doing their thing, we're doing our thing, and he's like, maybe you got some ideas. Because he's like, if you got some, because he's like, I've been working with this guy for a couple of months now, since before the lockdown, on this custom house. But now he's thinking, because he's gone a few months not being able to meet with his clients, he's like, well, maybe I don't have as much, you know, extra money laying around to build this custom house. And he's like, come on, man. Did a lot of planning. We're, you know, he's like, this is over $1 million, you know, house. He's like, this is huge commission for me. Plus, you know, there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of people who've already put work into this. And, you know, we want this to all come to fruition, so everybody gets paid. He gets his house, and everybody, you know, nobody loses, right? He's like, this was a big deal. And I was like, no, I get it, man. I was like, he was like, so I was thinking maybe you could talk to him. Maybe you could coach him, help him work out some ideas how he could continue to coach his clients from a distance. He was like, maybe like Zooms or something like that. Could you do golfing lessons on a Zoom? And I was like, I don't know. I was like, I mean, I guess I don't see why you couldn't do like tutorials or something like that. I'm sure the clients would probably pay less because they're not getting that, in person where, hold your hand like this, grip your fingers like this, and where you can literally move their fingers and show them. You know what I mean? I was like, you're losing a little something by not having that in-person connection. But I think there's a lot that can still be done. And so maybe he could still make money. He's like, look, I could refer him to you. You could make some money by being his coach. He could make some money by being their coach. And then ultimately, I make some money by him still having money and getting his house. And then when I make some money, all these other people, the architect, the builders, and all these different people, all of them make money because we all helped him get his house and none of this fell apart because there's so many moving parts. And the reality is, as me and him are having this conversation, we were on the phone like a good over 2 hours that night. It was crazy. And we just started talking and we're like, we are on the cusp. Like at that moment, we were like, we are on the brink of something new right here. We are on the brink of an economic rebirth. We're on the brink of something where people are going to start thinking outside the box. And then it was crazy because I saw Warren Buffett do an interview, right? Warren Buffett did an interview, and this is cool because he's Oracle Omaha, man, world-renowned investor. He's brilliant. But when they talked to him, like, how do you think this, and this was late in the summer, this was later that summer, they were interviewing him, and they're like, how do you feel about how the world is right now and what's going on in the economy? He's like, you know what? He's like, when you've lived as old as I am, this is what he said, because he's not a young man. He's like, this is when you've lived as old as I am, and you've seen this, and you've seen this, and you've seen these wars and those wars, and you've seen the economic downfall of this and the downfall of that, and you've seen this flip-flop and everything. He was like, you could look at all these things. He's like, I've seen things. And I've watched America be in a bad place. And he's like, and every time America was like down and done and crashing, it's all over, they bounced back faster than when they got to that point in the first place. And you know what? He wasn't wrong. If you look back through history, every time we've had recessions, every time we've had you look what happened at the technological growth prior to the Depression and the growth immediately after. Immediately after the Depression, we grew faster than we ever had grown before it. You look at the stock market crashes, the recession in the 80s, the house market dump in the early 2000s. It's like you look at these things and our economy has always bounced back faster and grown quicker than they did prior to that setback. Why is that? And Buffett had a take on it, actually. And he said, if you look at it, the things that I've seen, and the reason I quote Buffett is because, like I said, his perspective is incredible because he was actually there and witnessed all these firsthand. He didn't read books about it like I did. He didn't hear stories about it like I did. Like, he actually experienced it. He lived through these things. And he's like, while I went through these things, I saw all these things happening. I saw these catastrophes, and I saw America bounce back faster. And he said, you know what I rest in? I rest in the fact that there are people in this country that are smarter than I'll ever be, that understand things on a level that I could never understand. The things that they have an iPhone do now, the things that smartphones, Androids, the things that they can put in these little devices, the things that our country has learned and grown and developed will bounce back. And so me and my pal Sean, we're sitting here rapping, right? And we're talking, we're like, you know what? We see America growing. We see America, we saw, okay? We could sit back at that moment and we say, we see so many people just sitting on their couch, just waiting. God, when's it going to work? President, when's it going to work? They're waiting for some big, miraculous turnaround, waiting for something to happen. Wow. They were waiting for a miraculous turnaround. So many others were sitting back, not wasting a breath, not wasting a moment, but literally just racking their brain. What am I going to do different? How can I change this, right? What can I do in this moment to alter my station, my situation? What can I do to rise above what is holding me back? How can I get past this? How can I not allow this moment to be what defines me? How can I not let this break me? What can I do? And you know, the thing is people built classes, people built courses, people built businesses, people wrote books, people did things they had never done. Churches. Man, oh man. There were churches that literally grew amidst the pandemic. It's interesting because churches who had never been online, they never had an online presence, now had a reason. They're like, we can't meet in person. We got to share the word of God. What can we do? So they created an Instagram, created a Facebook, created a YouTube channel, created an everything. They created all these social media platforms so that way they could start spreading the news, right? They could share, they could still grow. And then now some of these churches, the church that I was a part of in Austin, the church that I'm presently a part of here in Wyoming, these churches, their congregation grew amidst that strife, that adversity. People literally launched businesses after being months without work, desperate for employment. I don't want to sit around waiting for a check to magically show up in the mail, right? What can I do differently? People are like, how can I do my job via satellite? How can I do my job remotely? Now, see, that became a problem for some people because some people, once things got opened back up, they're like, I'm never going back in the office again. And some companies had a problem with that, which fair enough. That's fine. That's their prerogative. My company, my rules. If you're going to work for me, you're going to come into the office. At the end of the day, that's not right or wrong because it's their business, it's their company. But those people who didn't want to go back into that office, they drew a line and they said, I can do something else. People opened restaurants after the pandemic shut down. Or after the pandemic ended and things reopened. No more shutdown. People opened restaurants. Now, it's tragic and sad that so many restaurants and so many businesses closed. But the reality, which people don't like to talk about, people don't like to think about, if you look at the economics and the statistics of some of these companies were on their way out for 5 or 6 or 8 years prior to the pandemic happening, and it was just the final nail in their coffin, which is sad and terrible. I have had many businesses, and I've had many bad partnerships and bad ideas and bad companies and businesses that crumbled and failed and crashed, and you never want to see a business fall apart. You never want to see it close its doors for the last time. You don't. But the pandemic didn't cause it for a lot of them. Lots of business were afforded loans from the government, breaks to try to help them not close their doors, to help stimulate our economy, right? Keep people working. We're no longer on the cusp. We're in it. We've been in it for well over 2 years. It's been going on 3 years that we are literally in the midst of economic rebirth. We have companies and businesses popping up all over. We have more companies and businesses being started right now than ever in the history of our country. Ever. Right now. Now, as I said, all the politicians will tell you the things that went wrong and the bad things that had nothing to do with me. It was the other guy. And everybody will tell you, well, everything that's going right and these new jobs and these new companies and these new business, well, it's all me. It had nothing to do with the other guy. It was all me. I had this idea. I'll tell you who's really responsible. First of all, I want to touch on one topic, and it might touch some nerves, and then we'll blow past it, but I want to mention it. First of all, inflation. Take all the conspiracy theories you want. Take them all. I don't care. Whatever conspiracy you believe in, that's fine. I ain't mad at you. Whoever is the cause of the pandemic is the cause of inflation. Inflation was spawned from this pandemic. It was an economic runoff by shutting not just our country, but shutting down the globe. Countries all over the world shut down and had no activity, had no business. Our economy thrives on circulation, constant circulation. It's like a river. It's got to keep moving. And that stagnation, for as long as it was, drove the inflation to where it was. And that's why, although many people would disagree, inflation is on its way down. It's been on its way down. Gas is way down. May not be as far down as it once was, as much as where you would make you happy. But the reality is I lived through 2009. When they said on the news, gas will never, ever, 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 ever be under $5 again. And now we're complaining that gas is $3.50. How could it be $3.50? There's a fluctuation. Things happen in the world, things happen in our nation, and it makes inflation happen. Gas was way more expensive 3 years ago than it is today. Now, eggs were more expensive. Milk was more expensive. They're way down than where they were. And the reason for the inflation, like I said, it's the runoff from that pandemic, that stagnation in our economic structure. Now, like I said, we're going to move on from inflation. These presidential candidates, and the other politicians who all want to take credit or give credit or point blame, the reason, the true credit, and it's not blame, it's credit. Our country had a catastrophe, had a horrific experience. And when we went through it, our country did what our country does. What someone like Warren Buffett lived through and got to watch. Something that my grandma got to watch and live through. Something my dad, he got to live through a good portion and watch. My mother-in-law got to live through a good portion and watch. America did exactly what America does. It bounces back and it fights hard. Why? Not because of who's in the Oval Office. One person doesn't have this ability. It's because of so many Americans who said there's more. So many Americans who said, I have an idea. So many Americans unwilling to sit on their couch waiting for an unemployment check or waiting for some stipend from the government, but they wanted to do something better. And then once they realized there was other choices, they wanted something more for their family. That is the American dream. That is America. And that is where all the credit's due. The American people. The American entrepreneur. The American visionary. That's it. If you're watching this video, dollars to donuts, you're one of those. I would bet money that you're one of them. That you deserve the credit. I know I deserve the credit. I'm not here trying to stroke my own ego or pat myself on the back. I'm saying the reality is it's guys like us, it's ladies like us, it's people willing to, they want more. They want more and they're unwilling to settle, and they're not going to just sit back and wait for a handout, but they're going to fight for more. Those are the ones who are making America great. Those are the ones who did something years, decades, centuries ago, and they're the ones who are doing it today. They're the ones. So, as this election approaches, go vote. Go vote. But I tell you this, vote based on merit. Vote based on your conscience. Vote based on who you believe is going to be better for this country as a head of state. But at the end of the day, don't vote because they promised you something with our economy. We got that. The American people have already figured that one out. Now, I would love for our Congress to stop spending money frivolously on silly things, but as of right now, we're not voting for Congress. So, we'll pray about that. You know what I'm saying? All right, it's your boy. I hope this helps. I hope it gives you some insight. Share this with somebody else. I'm out.